Okay, I think this is going to be part 7. Here's hoping I can get something done. Preparing for Lutz's apprenticeship. Not a baptism, that's coming up, though. Mine, what's your plans for today? Asked Lutz. The weather's bad. I looked out the window and saw thick dark clouds that signaled a bad day for papermaking. I had the option to go to the forest just to gather, but if rain fell along the way, I'd be the only one who would struggle to get home. It'd be smarter for me just to sit today out. By spring, I've been spent making paper on sunny days and walking around the city with Mark on cloudy days to help get the workshop ready. But the workshop was mostly finished, and they knew how to make paper themselves now. The other day they had made a prototype that I had checked and confirmed to be a success, so there was really nothing left for us to do. Benno said our baptism is next fire day, so I wanted to finish making our last batch of paper, but it looks like the weather's not cooperating. Hey, even without this last batch of paper, I'm so rich right now I can hardly believe it. Each sheet of paper was worth a small silver, and whenever we sold paper, we brought some of the money back for our families. We brought enough to improve our food situation, and not much else. But we both had a stunning amount of money saved in the Merchant's Guild. That was thanks to the high price of Trompa paper, and the overall good weather that helped us make lots of batches. After the last batch, we sold my savings had surpassed 2 large gold. Lutz was just about to hit 2 large gold himself. No matter how you thought about it, that was too much money for pre-baptism kids to have. But well, once our baptism's over, I won't be earning much money for a while. I started to think about if I had forgotten anything we needed to do before our baptism ceremony when suddenly I realized something. Let's go to Benno's today. We totally forgot something. Huh? We didn't promise to go there today. Our baptism is next Friday, right? We should check now to see what you need to be an apprentice. Your parents aren't merchants, so they won't have any tools to give you. Apprentice work began after the baptism, so it was customary for parents to give them work clothes and tools as a baptismal gift. It was to encourage their children and give them a head start on their journey down the same career path that their parents once traveled themselves. Tula, for example, had been given work clothes and a sewing set after her baptism since she was becoming a seamstress. Shoot, let me check. I wanted to make sure this was recording. I didn't want that to happen again. But in Lutz's case, his parents couldn't prepare anything for him, in part since his father was still against him becoming a merchant, and in part because his parents didn't know what tools to get him, since they weren't merchants themselves. On top of that, we didn't know how much money it would cost to prepare Lutz for his merchant apprenticeship. Benno had said clothes were important and ordered his outfits, but that alone probably wouldn't be enough. It was likely that Lutz would need tools and other things beyond clothes to be a merchant. Luckily, he had enough savings that he could buy what he needed on his own. All we had to do was ask Benno or Mark what we needed. I don't know what tools you would need, really. Maybe a calculator and a stone slate since you'll have your apprentice lessons, but what else? I can buy pretty much anything right now. You were right, Maya. Saving up money was the right idea. Carla was on Lutz's side now, but she still didn't know what one needed to be a merchant. She didn't have any connections with merchants, and his dad was as unsupportive as ever. Though Lutz said that he was more comfortable at home now that his mom was telling his brothers off. Good. Benno's going to be your guardian, more or less, once you become an apprentice, so I think it'd be best to ask him. I picked up my tote bag, and we headed to Benno's store beneath the heavy clouds. Oh, was it not several days until the next batch of paper would be ready? Mark blinked in surprise after seeing us. Having now grasped the schedule, our papermaking followed. We realized we needed to talk to Mr. Benno about something, but maybe we can just ask you first. If I remembered correctly, Mark was in charge of teaching the apprentices here. We want to know what tools apprentices need. Lutz's parents aren't merchants, and we won't know what to get him after his baptism, so he needs to buy his stuff himself. Oh, that is true. I did not consider that. Mark shook his head at himself and placed a finger on his temple. The baptism is really soon. Do we still have time? And maybe we should talk to Mr. Benno about this since he'll be Lutz's guardian. I believe it would be best to act after discussing things with the master. Mark took us to Benno's office as usual. Inside we saw Benno running furiously on something with stacks of boards and paper surrounding him on his desk. He looked busy. Sir, mine and Lutz are here to see you. Why? Asked Benno without looking up or stopping writing. I pushed Lutz's back to encourage him to ask on his own. Master Benno, we have arrived to discuss the tools I required to be a merchant's apprentice, said Lutz shakily, having probably rehearsed the smart-sounding line in his head on the way here. Benno, having probably just found a good stopping point, put his pen down and looked up. He looked confused, so I added on an explanation. I think parents normally provide those tools, but Lutz's parents aren't merchants, so they don't know what to get him. What does Lutz need to be an apprentice? He just doesn't just need the clothes, right? Yeah, now that you mention it. You can go shopping with Mark. I just got notice that your apprentice outfits are done. Order some changes of clothes on your way to pick them up. Okay, I nodded, but Let's blinked in confusion beside me. Change of clothes? Multiple? Obviously, you think you can work in the same outfit all week? It'd get dirty, stretched out, and you'd stink. That's not happening here. Benno ran a shop that also catered to nobles, so appearances were fairly important. An employee couldn't be presented to customers with dirty, stretched-out clothes with wrinkles. This was reflected by the fact that all the employees I could see working for Benno's store looked neat and clean. I have to change clothes every day? Really? Oh my god, does he not do that? Ew! How can mine stand to be around somebody that stinks? Even if he doesn't stink himself, I'm sure his clothes probably do. Only once a week. Tuli only washed her clothes once a week on the day Mom had off work. I can imagine the same for Lutz's brothers. Nobody changed their work clothes every day. Generally, a worker only had a couple outfits at best, and they'd wear the spare while the other dried. Washing clothes damaged them, so most avoided doing this so for as long as possible outside of underwear. Unlike Benno, who had servants working for him, Lutz was at the bottom of his family hierarchy. It'd be hard for him to ask his mother to wash his clothes frequently enough that he could have a daily change of clothes. But it was necessary for him to do his job. If you can't ask Carla to do that for you, maybe you should wash your own clothes. Apprentices have days off, so... you'll have to wash your own clothes no matter what if you end up as a live-in apprentice. That is true. If he was to do that, he would have to do everything himself. I know, but I know that this different way of life is surprising for you, but you have to get used to it. If you don't do this, you'll gross out customers and get fired. Merchants and craftsmen just aren't the same. Lutz nodded, and I saw that Benno was experiencing some culture shock, too. He blinked slowly and murmured, "Wow, our lives really are fundamentally different." Which is why I'd like you to point it out if we ever do anything weird. We just don't know any better. Yeah, I'll keep an eye out, Mark. They're in your hands. Yes, sir. We waited for Mark to finish up work and then left to get the clothes together. It was customary by this point for Mark to pick me up on our way to the workshops, and I had completely given up fighting it. Welcome. An employee greeted us and realized while we were here the second she saw Mark and us. She took Lutz and me to a room nearby. Please try them on. The employee gave me a simple blouse and skirt with a vest just like Mark's. I had been measured closely enough that the clothes fit like a glove. The mere fact that I was getting new clothes that weren't hand-me-downs was enough for me to get pumped. I wiggled my arms around, squatted, and stood up, and did all sorts of things to get a feel for the clothes. Not once did they squeeze me or feel uncomfortable. Wow, I like this outfit. It's comfy and easy to wear. I'm glad to hear that. Mark said you'll be wearing those clothes out today, so we will wrap your old clothes. While I was testing out my clothes, Lutz had apparently gone to order 2 more outfits with the same design and size. Once I walked out, Mark and Lutz headed my way. Very cute. A simple change of clothes, and now you look like the daughter of a wealthy family. Yeah, you look super rich now. Their compliments made me feel even more pumped. I tried lifting up the hem of my skirt in a fancy bow. Really? I'm cute? I look like a rich girl? And not just because of the clothes? When you're quiet and not being a dork, yeah. But, now that you're trying to keep yourself clean, you kind of look like a rich boy yourself, Lutz. Since Benno had lectured Lutz about looking clean, he had started semi-regularly using rinse sham on himself. His blonde hair was silky and sparkly. Ever since I'd mentioned using Mark as an example for dignified behavior, Lutz had started paying attention to his posture and general body language. The change of clothes was all it took to complete his transformation into a rich boy. It didn't feel like the clothes were wearing him at all. We can go shopping at other stores now, huh? It wasn't rare for stores to turn people away based on their clothes. After we paid with our guild cards, Mark took us in our new fancy clothes to the next store. It was a stationery store. Mark opened the window with the pen mark on the front, and inside was a counter with a pleasant-looking old man polishing something on top of it. The walls had shelves with products on them, but not many. There was 1 example per product on the shelf and nothing else, which was in fact normal in this city. There was only a small space for customers, and most of the actual store was the storage rooms containing the products. Although I knew it was necessary to ward off thievery, the fact that I couldn't browse through the products made me sad. What do we need here, Mark? A few things. Ink, a pen, and parchment to sign the employment contract. He already owns a stone slate, slate pens, and a calculator, yes? Other than that, he'll need several wooden boards, said Mark, which made me sigh. All of that was too expensive for Lutz's parents to buy. We now had enough money to buy it ourselves, but ink and parchment were too expensive for those in our class to easily afford. I want some ink too. I took the opportunity to buy ink and a pen for myself. Buying my own ink was an emotional experience for me, since in the past it had been too expensive for me to even consider getting on my own. The older man put my ink and pen on the counter. I paid with my guild card and took them. Yay, my own ink and pen! I spun around in circles with a grin on my face, overjoyed to hold the ink and wooden pen in my hands. But let's look less happy. The money I saved up is just slipping away. Didn't know being a merchant would be this expensive. Yeah, you're gonna have to spend your money eventually, dude. Had Benno's store been smaller, it would have been less expensive to join. A lesser store wouldn't sign its employment contracts on parchment, they would just use wooden boards. It's only expensive because Benno's store is so big, and you still have lots of money to spare, right? Yeah, but I lost this much in a single day. I'm getting kinda nervous. I can't ask my parents for anything. Let's try and make more paper before the baptism. There's not much time left, but we can try if it's sunny out. We returned to the store and informed Benno that we had bought what we needed. He told us to always come to the store wearing the apprentice clothes from now on. I took that as a stamp of approval from him. We looked just like proper apprentices. So let's. Where should we put your stuff? In our workshop? That'd be the safest. It would be a bit annoying, but we started discussing whether we should borrow the key and put his apprentice stuff in the workshop when all of a sudden Benno shrugged. Why not just put it in your room? Why bother with the storage building? Oh, we don't have our own rooms. We only have boxes to put our stuff in. Oh my god. Yeah, culture shock again right here. Yeah, very completely different lives. Benno's eyes widened at that revelation. Judging from what I had seen of Karina's house, they had plenty of spare rooms. It seemed that since he had been raised as the successor to a large store, Benno hadn't known anyone who didn't have their own room. My place is kind of worse than mine. I've got a box for my stuff, but everyone just goes through it and takes what they want. Wait, seriously? Yeah. Wait, seriously? Shock washed over Benno's face. He blinked, unable to comprehend that, so I explained to him what Lutz's life was like. Lutz is the youngest of 4 brothers, so he's basically at the mercy of his 3 siblings. He has it really rough. But still, they would steal their brother's stuff? They're fine with it since he's their little brother. What he owns, they own. What they own, they own. Yeah. Benno rubbed his temples as he learned about how Lutz lived. It was likely that things were so different from his own life that he could hardly imagine it. Benno had spent years working hard to support his family after his father's death, but he had never gone through their stuff, and he had never worried about where to put his things. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. Why not put your stuff in one of the upper rooms? I'll rent you a live-in apprentice room for cheap. Things will get a lot harder for you if anyone steals your work stuff or you lose it before your baptism. And the storage building is too far for you to go regularly before work. Thank you. Thanks to Benno's good graces, Lutz could now rent out an apprentice room for cheap to use as a storage room. As long as he remembered to lock the door, he wouldn't have to worry about his stuff getting stolen. You can change there before entering the store from now on. Lutz, having gained his own personal space for the first time in his life, nodded with a broad smile. I decided to put my stuff there too before going home. We couldn't go home right away since Benno was planning to take us to the Merchant's Guild. If you don't learn about the Merchant's Guild first, you won't even be able to do errand work. The children of merchants visited the Merchant's Guild frequently while helping their parents, so dropping by to deliver paperwork was normal for them. The first work that merchant apprentices usually did was running errands at the Merchant's Guild. Which brings us to the fact that Lutz hadn't even gone to the Merchant's Guild since the time we sold Frida's hairpins. He naturally couldn't run errand work there since he had never done it before. Wonder what else you could do. Benno thought about what other basic jobs any merchant's child could do while putting a bunch of request forms in Lutz's hands and heading to the Merchant's Guild. I went with them so I could read the boards on the guild's bookshelf. Oof, this is pretty bad. There were tons of carriages lined up in front of the Merchant's Guild by the plaza, with some passengers getting off to deliver their own forms to the guild while others got back in their carriages. It was a mess of people. It looks like the second floor would be crowded. Yeah, since market day and the baptism ceremony are both so close. Judging by the number of carriages, I can only imagine how many people were on the second floor. Lutz struggled to the inner staircase, keeping close behind Benno as the crowd crushed him. Benno was carrying me like usual, so I avoided the crowd crush. Benno showed his guild card to the guard, and the moment we started climbing the stairs, all the loud noise vanished. The fence probably had some magical properties that block sound, so essentially a soundproof. Seems like running errands will be a pretty rough job. When on errands, Lutz would have to push through the crowds without Benno taking the lead. He sighed hard. Sometimes people try to steal your paperwork or you lose it in the rush, so be careful. Anyway, first of all, this forum is about Benno set me down and headed to the counter while explaining to Lutz what the paperwork was. I turned around and tried to go to the bookshelf, but a hand grabbed my head and pulled me back. Where do you think you're going, huh? The bookshelf is calling for me. It's not. You're imagining things. After your baptism, you'll be a forewoman, so you need to listen too. It would be smart to have Benno teach me how the guild works, so he proceeded to teach us both how the counters worked and where to deliver certain paperwork. If you deliver a request here, you can browse what magic contracts have been registered. You're going to be making a lot of new products. Mine, so you need to learn what magic contracts are in effect. Oh, is that really you, Mine? A girl with light pink twin tails, Frida, came running this way from behind the counter. There was no mistaking her. It was Frida, the guildmaster's granddaughter. She was clearly wearing her apprentice outfit. While I was in the middle of trying to process what was happening, Frida put her hands on her hips and pouted unhappily. Spring's almost over and you haven't come over to play once, you know. Oh, the winter. Been busy. Oh, sorry, I've been really busy lately. I wasn't lying either. I have been busy making paper and getting the workshop ready. I had fulfilled my promise to make sweets with her, so I had kind of just thought I didn't need to go over. That's mean! Girl, she considers you her friend. You need to go over there more than just one time, and that's it. Her place was filled with traps, and she wouldn't stop trying to get me to join her store, which wasn't exactly my idea of a fun time. I apologized, and Frida shook her head, said it was okay, and smiled. I have tomorrow off, so you can come visit then. What? But if the weather's good tomorrow, I'm going to... Benno's hand tightened around my shoulder for a second. I was almost about to say make more paper, but it was still a secret that I was the man making paper for Benno, so I hurriedly closed my mouth. Frida glanced at Benno's hand and smiled. I will come get you if it's raining tomorrow. You may be busy if it's sunny out, but what would be better on a rainy day than visiting a friend? You promised to visit during the spring, but spring is almost over. It was hard to say no to an offer like that. It was true that I couldn't make paper on rainy days, and I would have the spare time to visit her. As I fell into thought, Frida advanced the conversation further. I would like to discuss more about the devouring and whatnot with you given the chance. Oh, I think there's something I wanted to ask about too. Frida was more informed about the devouring than anyone I knew. There was still a few things I was curious about, and an opportunity to talk with her would be welcome. See? You could still go visit her about stuff like that, but still, you need to go and hang out with her more. She might be a little bit, manipulative, but she still considers you a friend, and that's something. Hearing that made Frida's face light up, and she clapped her hands together. This is all if it rains, of course. I'll be waiting with the pound cake ready. Okay, if it rains, I'll go. The allure of a pound cake made me agree, and the moment I did, I felt Benno's fingers dig into my shoulder. Uh-oh. I looked up and saw that Benno was smiling with veins, bulging over his temples. Mine? Mr. Benno, we are merely discussing what we will do if it rains. Nothing is set in stone. That's right, I'll only go if it rains tomorrow. Frida extended a helping hand, and I jumped right on it. I tapped on Benno's hand so he would let me go, and I heard him murmur, "This unbelievable idiot," in a low voice. "It's raining tomorrow." What? Frida's smile deepened, and Let's let out a sigh. It seemed that even without a weather channel, everyone knew there would be rain tomorrow. I mean, with the clouds are, of course there might be rain. The rain started falling in the evening, and it didn't stop when the sun rose again. Yep, you're going over there, Mine. Probably without Let's, too. Contract with Frida. No, it's raining. There's no wiggling out of this one. It's just objectively raining outside. I slumped my shoulders and ate while listening to the rain hit the windows. Frida's smile, Benno's groan, and Let's' sigh had all been justified. It was really raining. Oh well. Now that I knew for sure I was going to Frida's house, I just had to do my best to extract as much valuable information from her as possible. I'd be safe with Let's with me. I took my hard-to-chew bread and snapped and mopped it with last night's leftover soup before biting down. I then wiped my bowl with the last of the bread to finish breakfast and sighed as I looked around. I wish I could bring a gift or something, but I don't think I own a single thing she doesn't. Frida's home was styled after the residence of nobles, and there was nothing I could bring her that she didn't already probably have. And better, too. Tuli took a sip of water and tilted her head. What about more simple all-in-one shampoo? She loved it when we brought some over earlier, right? Benno started officially selling Ridge Jam, and he told me not to hand over any for free. Making some for my own use is one thing, but giving it out for free would disturb the market or something. Oh, okay. It's too rainy to pick any flowers today. This is rough, said Tuli as she took a little bit of water from the jug to wash her bowl. Once she was done with that, she started busily preparing for work. Mom had already left, and Dad was asleep since he had night shift yesterday. I quietly used some water to clean my bowl as well. I wish we'd made this promise days ago so I could have picked fruit ahead of time. Benno was lending a room to Lutz and helping me establish the mine workshop for my products, so I really wanted to avoid upsetting him. I owed him a lot. It wasn't on purpose that I blabbed about things and often succumbed to the temptation of making food for myself to eat. I didn't want him to be mad at me. That's just what kept happening. The problem was that avoiding Benno's anger meant not giving away any wrench jam, nor anything involving paper. Frida and Lace would both love it if I told them a new sweets recipe, and I personally would love to eat said sweets, but Benno would definitely get mad at me, so just make the pound cake. Now that I'm not his apprentice, I think I'm free to spread recipes wherever I want, but that might end up biting me in the butt later. Yes, it would. Yes, it would, mine. You know that for a fact. I groaned and fell into thought, trying to think of a gift to give Frida when suddenly a knock came on the door. You have to give her a gift! Just go hang out with her! That's all she wants! Thule, wearing a thick raincoat-esque jacket covered in oil and was for waterproofing since she was about to go to work, looked up and headed to the door. Yes? Who is it? I started putting my dishes away, thinking that Lutz was just a little earlier than expected, but Thule's shriek of surprise wiped that thought out of my mind. Frida, you're here! Cried Thule. I turned around in surprise and saw Frida standing in front of the door with a servant. She was wearing fine clothes despite the weather, so as was her attendant, which means they both stood out strongly in contrast to our poor housing. To be honest, they made us look even poorer than we already were. And that's saying something. I've been so eager to see mine since waking up that I could bear it no longer and elected to come here myself to pick mine up. She smiled and I could hear the implied, "I'm not letting you get away," in her voice. Or in her words. A shudder ran down my spine. I wanted to turn right around and flee, but I couldn't leave Thule behind like that. She turned around and said, "Wow, mine, she's so excited to play with you that she came through the rain," with a happy smile. "Thule, you're an angel. Please never lose that innocence." Far be it from me to make mine walk in the rain with her ill health. My carriage is waiting on the main street. She had likely predicted that I would turn her down by claiming I didn't want to get sick by walking in the rain. I could shake my head in awe at how masterfully she was weaving her web around me. A carriage? Wow, that's so nice, mine. Frida, seeing Thule with her work equipment in hand, tilted her head. "Oh, do you have work today?" "Uh-huh. I need to get going soon." "This sucks," said Thule, but Frida briefly fell into thought, then clapped her hands with a meaningful smile. "In that case, would you like to ride partway to your destination?" "What? I can go too? I can ride the carriage?" Thule's face lit up. Normally, poor people like us would never in our entire lives get the chance to ride in a carriage. I could understand Thule's excitement, but it seemed like my only option would be to hurry up and get ready so we could leave. "Thule, you have to go get Lutz." "Oh, that's right. I'll go get him." But if Lutz comes, there won't be enough space for you to ride as well." Thule set her stuff down and started to run off, but Frida regretfully stopped her. I needed Lutz to watch over me whenever I went outside. If Lutz coming meant Thule couldn't ride, well, that was unfortunate for her. "Huh? What? I don't get to ride?" "Oh, now you're making Thule upset." "Really, mine? You really need Lutz with you? Girl, you should..." Oh my god. Hold on. Can't they take Thule first? So she gets to ride the carriage. She go get Lutz, bring him here, they take her to her destination, then come back and get them. Despair and disappointment feel that much worse if you once had hope. Oh, Thule hung her head, looking close to tears. I started to panic a little, not sure how to make her feel better, when Frida intervened. She took Thule's hands and smiled so gently. "Dear Thule, I'll take responsibility here and take care of mine in Lutz's place. I promise that I will not allow mine to fall ill. You may rest easy and ride with us. Mind, you won't get tired or wet thanks to the carriage, right? Will you be okay with that, Lutz?" "No, I won't!" Or so I said on the inside, but Thule's desperate look was too much for me to refuse. Why can't they just take Thule first and then come back and get Frida and them? Why can't they do that? Seriously. Then everybody be happy. Well, Frida might, but whatever. But Thule's desperate look was too much for me to refuse. I couldn't say that I needed Lutz and that she would have to walk to work. She had been so happy to get the chance to ride a carriage. So what else could I do? I didn't want to go to Frida's alone, but my hands were tied. "I'll be fine. Let's go, Thule." "Thanks, mine. I'll go tell Lutz and you get ready." Thule dashed out of the house in excitement and headed to Lutz's house. Once her footsteps faded, I could hear only the rain. Ultimately, Frida had exploited Tuli to get rid of Lutz. No. I glared at her, eyes narrowed. Frida? Your older sister was happy, was she not? She was. Fine. I dug my own grave here anyway. It was my own weakness that prevented me from cutting Tuli off. There was no point in attacking Frida. I got my things ready while thinking about how mad Lutz and Benna would be at me for not thinking ahead again. Sorry, I didn't manage to find any gifts for you. You'll be spending a day's worth of time with me, mine. I cannot ask for a greater gift than that. See? You didn't have to bring anything. Her smile was that of a young girl excited to spend time with a friend. But I knew that Frida was no innocent child. Still, she might be the granddaughter of the guildmaster, but that doesn't mean that she's always in that mode 100% of the time. She's probably just excited to spend time with you. Not even taking that into account. Mine, I left a message for Carla. Let's go. We'll be late. Tuli, slipping back inside with a smile, washed away the heavy atmosphere. Let us go. We walked outside and locked the door behind us. In general, people of the city wore thick mantles and white hats to block the rain. Naturally, they weren't exactly waterproof, so spending a lot of time outside or under heavy rain would still get you wet with soaked clothing. That wouldn't be a problem for us, though, since we were just passing through a narrow alley on the way to the main street. Now then, hop inside. We hurriedly got into the carriage waiting for us and took off our rain gear. The servant sat next to the driver, so it was just us kids inside. Wow, so this is what a carriage looks like on the inside. Please sit, we're about to leave. Will the plaza be a fine place to let you off? I work really close to the plaza, so the close end of the craftsman alley. Tuli was bouncing around in excitement while looking around, so Frida told her to sit down. I went ahead and sat in the middle of the bench. The carriage was built for 2 adults and had just enough room for 3 kids to sit comfortably next to each other. It bounced around a lot once it started moving, but unlike before, I was actually sitting in my seat properly, so I wasn't flung around anywhere. Your baptism is coming up soon, isn't it? What kind of outfit will you wear? Mine's outfit is my outfit, remade, but it's so fancy now you wouldn't think that, answered Tuli, puffing out her chest with pride as if she was talking about herself. She and Mom had been remaking the outfit more over the past months, making it look increasingly fancy with each attempt. Fancy? It's not what you'd expect from remade clothes. It has a really weird design now, but mine worked hard so it looks super cute. Or Mom worked hard so it looks super cute. It was probably hard for Frida to imagine us having fancy clothes after seeing the poor state of our home. She looked confused, but Tuli wasn't lying. Though it was hard to explain exactly what we had done. Frida, your baptism outfit was super fluffy and cute. I want to try wearing clothes like that someday. My, thank you. Incidentally, does that mean you've made a new hairpin as well? Frida smiled happily at Tuli's praise and shifted the topic to hairpins. All the hairpins we had made outside of Frida's had the same design and differed only by color. But she was probably curious about the one I had made for myself, figuring I would go the extra mile on it. 'Cause it's my celebration. I worked really hard on it. I made 3 large roses just like the ones in yours. May I assume, then, that our hairpins match each other? Frida looked at me a little doubtfully, head tilted. Tuli didn't know what to say, and pulled my sleeve nervously. They both have large flowers, but mine's are white, and, it shakes? They don't really match, right, mine? The thread is actually more of a cream color, but it does look white from a distance. I put tiny flowers around the roses, too, but it doesn't look like yours, Frida. You'll see when the day comes. Right, Tuli? It wouldn't be fun if we told you everything, said Tuli, putting a hand over her mouth and smiling mischievously. Frida broke into a smile as well. My, I will look forward to it then. I shall go all the way outside to see. The carriage made good progress as we talked, and soon enough I saw Tuli's workplace within the line of workshops. We stopped the carriage, and Tuli put her stuff back on. After getting her bag of tools in hand, she nervously glanced back at me. Fear not, I shall see mine home safely with myself. Good luck at work, Tuli. Thanks for letting me ride your carriage, Frida. Sorry, mine, for being pushy. She waved goodbye and ran to her workshop as the horses drawing our carriage resumed trotting. Welcome back, mine. A pound cake I baked is ready for you. Let me know what you think. When we arrived at Frida's, Lace was already waiting for us. She took us to the parlor and immediately placed tea and cake on the table. I took one bite and was in heaven immediately. The dough was baked to be perfectly moist, and she must have mastered baking cakes with the oven, as it tasted significantly better than last time. So good. This is way better than last time. You baked it perfectly. Good to hear it. I was wondering if I could improve it somehow. Improve it? I think it tastes plenty good already. I threw a piece of the cake into my mouth and fell into thought while enjoying the sweet flavor. There were some things she could do, like make it look fancier on the plate, add dry fruit, shaved citrus peels to mix into the batter, etc., but Benna would probably get mad if I told her any of those things. Benna would definitely get mad no matter what I do. And while I would be fine with a simple cake here, I really want to support Lace since she's invested in making food better. I don't know how much you can improve it, but I'll trade you ideas for a bag of sugar. I suggested the trade, thinking back to the about 1 kilogram heavy bag I had seen in the kitchen before. Lace looked at Frida, who held the ultimate authority here. A bag of sugar. Is that a trade I can make, my lady? Yes, certainly. You heard her. Let's hear the ideas. I gasped a little at Lace's intensity and went in my mouth. If you had grated absolute peels to the dough, it should taste and smell better. Smell differently, maybe better. The flavor can also be changed by putting different things in it, like dried fruit. Please experiment on your own to see what will taste the best. This is extra information, but if you're serving the pound cake to nobles, it would look fancier if you add whipped cream and sliced fruit on top. Okay, let's give it a shot. Frida sucked in air and stood up to leave immediately. Frida and I were left behind. After blinking in surprise, we smiled at each other. Forgive me, mine, to think she would behave like that in front of a guest. She's normally much more calm, but when new recipes get involved, it's good that she has a drive to improve her cooking. The harder she works, the better our food gets. I can appreciate her enthusiasm. Tasty food spreading through the world would be nothing but good, so I would like her to experiment all she wanted. Speaking of which, why are you working as an apprentice in the Merchant's Guild? Aren't you going to own a store in the Noble District when you grow up? You can be an apprentice, even if you won't work here. I didn't expect to see Frida working in the Merchant's Guild when her future plan was to own a store. I asked what was up while eating cake, and Frida answered while drinking tea. I asked my grandfather to employ me. I need to learn and make connections if I am to hold a store in the Noble District. I'll be all alone when the store opens. It will be necessary for me to be able to be capable of running the store on my own, and the more connections I have, the better. All alone? You won't have, Jet there to help you? No servants? Nobody but me will be permitted to reside in the Noble District. They will have servants of their own permitted for me, so I will not technically be alone, but I'm sure you understand. It would be hard to expect any servants assigned to her to be wise in the ways of economics and business. Wouldn't it be a little bit cruel to make a young girl who had just reached adulthood run a store by herself? Couldn't they at least let her bring a partner to work with and consult when necessary? In truth, I will not be entirely alone. My family is permitted to enter the Noble District on business. They will not be with me at all times, but still, they are strong allies to have. That's true. They wouldn't necessarily be ideal allies, but I found myself unable to do anything but agree with Frida. She was charging forward and challenging her fate. How could I say anything else? Her sophisticated, mature way of speaking and thinking were her sword and shield in the Noble District. She would have to train her skills now to survive an unfamiliar world. I am working in the guild and in my family's stores now, so that once my store opens, I'll be able to deal with whatever may happen. So yeah, best to have her working in stores so that she'll know how to run them when she gets to that point. That's really impressive, Frida. I can tell you're thinking really far ahead, I said, which made Frida's expression harden. She looked at me quietly, eyes serious, and opened her mouth. There is something I would like to ask you as well. May I? Well, here comes the main point. A thought crossed my mind. I knew what Frida would be asking. I smiled and nodded. What in the world are you thinking? Asked Frida. A reasonable person would have cut off Benno and joined my side by now. I've been waiting for that, mine. Waiting for you to come to me seeking my help. The Guildmaster and Frida would be stronger allies than Benno when it came to seeking help from nobles to survive. Otto pointed out the same thing. Everyone would think the same. A store with deep connections to nobles would be able to negotiate more in my favor, so there was no doubt in that. It's almost summer, but you have made no moves. Are you thinking about your future? If you do not negotiate with the nobles soon, you will... Passion crept into her voice as she tried to convince me, firm in her beliefs from her own history. I could tell there was a restless sense of urgency boiling within her. I mean, hello, you're her first friend. She doesn't want to lose her first friend because of that stupid devouring. She wants you to survive. As a fellow sufferer of the devouring, she was worried about me. It would take time for negotiations to end and the contract to be signed. Frida was wanting me to hurry out of fear of delaying the tools that would save my life. I would feel a little embarrassed for worrying her. I let out a dry laugh and looked into her eyes. You know, Frida, I thought about it really hard and decided that I want to die while living with my family. Frida froze with eyes and mouth wide open. From her trembling lips came a slight whisper. No way. I've mostly given up already. Thule cried and said we could search for a way to keep me alive, but there's no way to survive the devouring outside of signing my life away to nobles, is there? If there had been another way, the Guildmaster wouldn't have had to use all the power and resources at his disposal to save Frida. He must have researched ways to cure the devouring while gathering magic tools and buying time. In the end, he didn't find anything and had no choice but to negotiate a deal with the noble, and sign Frida's life away. How could I do any better? None that I know of. I actually do want at least one more magic tool so I can try to finish what I'm doing. But I'm not even considering signing myself to a noble. There's nothing but magic tools that can cure the devouring, right? If I knew of something, I would have used it myself, said Frida, glaring at me in frustration. I shrugged. What I wanted to ask you, Frida, was whether or not I could buy magic tools from someone other than a noble. Or could I make them my... Girl, if you could make them yourself, they wouldn't be so scarce. I doubt it. Something like that. Ideally, I could make magic tools myself, but how? How? But unfortunately, there weren't any books about how to build them back on Earth. I had played games and read fantasy books that brought up magic tools, but they obviously weren't useful here. And as far as I knew, there weren't any workshops that... Of course not! That made magic tools in this city. Creating magic tools requires mana, so only nobles with mana can do so. Nobody who knows how to make magic tools lives on this side of the inner wall. Okay, I was thinking I could try making some myself if I knew how, but I guess that's not happening. If only nobles could create them with their mana, then the only magic tool workshops in the city would be in the nobles district. I had hoped that I could make things work with how much money I had now, but as expected, things didn't pan out that way. I had not considered the idea of making them myself. That's because you're the daughter of a rich family. I'm poor, and everything I've wanted I've had to make myself. So the first idea that came to mind was trying to make them myself. I laughed at myself. Rinsham, hairpins, paper, soot pencils, chopsticks. Every time I wanted or needed something, I had to make it myself with help or not. Is your family that important to you? Are you not afraid of being consumed by the heat and dying? Murmured Frida. I don't know. I want to live, but I'm not that afraid of dying. I had already died, and I remembered it. My life here as mine was basically just a bonus life given to me by a whimsical god or whatever. Living here was fun now, but dying wouldn't be a big deal to me. I don't have access to books, so there's nothing super important to me about my family. The people around me. I haven't chosen to die, I've just chosen to be with my family. Books? Uh-huh. I've saved up a lot of money by now, maybe I could buy one, I said with a joking grin. Frida gave a troubled smile in return. If you want books, why not go to the nobles' quarters? There are plenty of books there. Maybe I would. If the contract said I could read as many books as I want, but I don't think a noble keeping me as a slave would let me touch their expensive, rare books. That would be unlikely considering your social status. From the perspective of a noble, I was a poor commoner in a city with a low literacy rate. Even if I did know how to read, they wouldn't want to let me touch their expensive and possibly irreplaceable books. It was likely they would have me killed if I touched them without permission. And suffice to say, I knew myself. I wouldn't be able to hold myself back in the presence of books. It was hard to imagine myself lunging... It wasn't hard to imagine myself lunging at the first book I saw and getting killed in moments. My plan was to try and establish a mass production line for books before I died, but that's a bit beyond me now. Why did you say that? You just told her you're trying to make books. I've basically given up. I just don't have enough time left. So instead, I want to earn as much money as I can and leave it behind for my family since I've been such a burden to them. I said with a self-derisive laugh. Frida's eyes flashed with a sharp light. In that case, shall I buy the pound cake recipe from you? Yes! Girl, yes! Do it! I looked at Frida, who had shifted entirely into merchant mode, and fell into thought. Pound cakes were a basic sweet, and although I wouldn't mind her monopolizing them for a limited time, I don't want her to own all the rights to it like Benno did with the Red Sham. That would seriously interfere with the growth of confectionery culture here. What would you say if I offered to sell you an exclusive right to sell it for 1 year at a price of 5 small golds? I would take that deal, of course, she answered immensely without a moment of hesitation. What do you mean, of course? Am I underselling them? Well, yes, I believe you are. Much like plant paper, there is no Why? How does she know about it? There's no precedent to pound cake, no similar product. Exclusive rights to sell it would generally be in the measure of large gold coins. After all, it will certainly earn that much and more in profit. Large gold coins? It seems that I have been giving Benno information for much, much cheaper than I should have been. So, will you raise your price? No, it's fine. We're only talking about a year here. 5 small golds isn't enough for me. Despite being given the opportunity to raise the price, I shook my head. Then I shall prepare the contract. What? Do you mean a magic contract? Would I have to live in fear again, bleeding onto the paper and worrying about people I didn't know getting hurt? I started to subconsciously tremble, and Frida let out an exasperated sigh. Mine. Contract magic is not used so frivolously. It exists as a means of security for when you're dealing with those overwhelmingly more powerful than you in mana and authority. A standard contract on parchment will suffice for us. Oh, I see. My first contract had been a magic one, so my sense of perspective was super off. But if Frida was right about that, why had Benno used a magic contract when dealing with me? Weird. Actually, mine, where did you even learn about contract magic? It's very rarely... No, don't tell her, don't tell her. You'll have to tell her about the paper. Benno would get mad at me if I told you, so it's a secret. Oh, I see you're learning. Frida giggled and reached for a bell on a nearby shelf. She rang it and entered the room silently. Please prepare a contract. Jen prepared a sheet of parchment, and Frida ran a feather pen over it, recording the contents of the contract. The pen looked fancier than the wooden one I bought, but as far as I could tell, it was harder to use. Writing up contracts was a daily event for Frida, given her work as an apprentice in the Merchants Guild, and even I had gotten used to it by now. After checking to make sure everything was in order, we tapped our guild cards together. Might I ask why you went for just 1 year? A year will be enough for everyone to learn it came from your store, right? But once sugar spreads out a bit more, I want newcomers to have a chance to make it too. Newcomers? Once the recipe is made public, there will be people competing with your store and working out new recipes and sweets. I really like sweets, so my idea was to have a lot of people making them and spreading them through the world. You would not be a good merchant, mine, as you do not prioritize your own profit above all else. Frida and I signed the parchment that would soon be officially recognized legal contract. With that, I had successfully sold to Frida the right to monopolize pound cake recipe sales for 1 year. But, well, I guess it'll only be publicized if I'm alive in a year. You can do whatever you want with it when I'm gone by then. If I'm gone by then. I will prioritize my profits so you will do well to survive and publicize it yourself in a year. Frida looked away, close to crying. Oh, Frida. Okay. I'm gonna hold on. In this part, I will see you guys next time.